All right, we'll get things rolling here shortly.
Okay.
All right, we'll get things rolling here shortly. Gotta kill the audio on that computer. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Hello and welcome to the Hockey Nuts Season 2, Episode 40 of the Hockey Nuts Podcast. How's it going today, Steve?
It's going good, Wayne. How you doing? Good to be with you.
Good.
Looking forward to a great podcast together.
Back for one more week. We're at Episode 40 for this season, 85 overall. So we're getting up there, and things are beginning to wind down here a little bit around the NHL. We are sitting at elimination games from here on out for the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yes, we are. I thought we'd get up to the Sidney Crosby episode, but I'm not going to make it, Wayne. Oh, God.
Nope. Instead, we're stuck at the Peter Klima episode. How's that for a throwback name, huh?
That's a good one.
That's a name that haunts me as a Bruins fan.
Yeah. Nordiques, wasn't he? Peter Klima?
No, well, the reason he haunts me is he was playing for the Oilers back in 1990, and he scored a goal in triple overtime of the Stanley Cup Final, Game 1, and that sent Edmonton off onto their what was it? Their
Fifth Stanley Cup.
Fourth or fifth Stanley Cup? No.
Yeah, that was after Gretzky was gone.
Yeah.
I knew I remembered him from somewhere
Yep.
in a Canadian team.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Bruins fans are with me in that one. That if they ever have to hear Peter Klima's name again, it'll be too soon. So
That was a very, very good one, Wayne. Way to open the show.
but that was his number. I remember that for sure. 85. All right. So enough about Peter Klima because it's been a long time since he's played. We've got to talk about everything going on in the Stanley Cup Final. We recorded a week plus a day ago, and we've had 3 games since then, and all 3 games have gone to Washington. So now we are sitting at a 3-1 lead for the Washington Capitals in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And certainly, I know you would agree with me that even though it is a 3-1 lead for Washington, the games I have been fantastic. I mean, I've been thoroughly entertained by these games.
Absolutely. This has been a very entertaining Cup final.
I don't envy anybody who's a diehard Capitals or Vegas Golden Knights fan, though, because they're probably having heart attacks every few minutes during those games. But as a guy who doesn't really have a dog in the fight, I can sit back and enjoy it for what it is. It's been a fantastic series so far. I hope it continues tonight.
Yes.
Game 5 is tonight, and I know you're rooting for a Game 5 win for Vegas, as am I. I want to see this. I want to see this series go the distance because these two teams have been putting on a show.
Oh, absolutely.
Great goaltending on both sides.
Great skating, wouldn't you say, Wayne?
A lot of
Tremendous
speed.
skating.
Tons of speed.
Yep.
In fact, we're going to start seeing copycats around the NHL, I think, from this. It is a copycat league, and the teams that tend to make it all the way to the final, they get emulated in the following season. So it makes me look forward to next season. You have fast skating teams, both of them, physical. The games have been very physical.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, both teams have been leaving it on the ice, and for for just the way it's turned out right now. Washington has the 3-1 leads because they split the 2 games in Vegas, and then the last 2 games were in Washington. Washington just held serve at home in those games. So we go back to Game 5. Game 5 is in Vegas, as is Game 7. So Vegas fans, you should feel. I know a lot of them are feeling defeated right now because they're down 3-1, but there's 3 games remaining in the series as long as they keep winning.
Absolutely.
2 of those 3 games are in Vegas.
Right.
Where they have shown that they are
formidable.
Yeah, I mean the Capitals found a way to win 1 game, but it took a monster effort by Braden Holtby in that game, and it took a monster effort from the whole Capitals team, and that's an effort that will be difficult to repeat. So,
so
Wayne, I'm not counting out Vegas in any stretch yet.
No, and we talked about this before we put press record on this podcast, and I think it's important. Rarely do I recall in previous Cup finals where I've really thought about the strategy involved from here on out, from a Game 5 on out in the series, as I have in this one. With a 3-1 Capitals lead, that's not, by no means are they secure. I don't feel that, at least, anyways. I think you kind of touched on it before we started, in that if Washington lets up tonight, they're in big trouble.
Yep.
They cannot afford to say, throw in the towel or drop back and punt in this game. Because then they really will have pressure on them. And I don't know if they have a tremendous amount of pressure tonight, but I think if you took the 2 teams, the team with the pressure on them tonight is definitely the Washington Capitals.
Absolutely.
Now, Barry Trotz should be very used to that, especially in big games. He has a tremendous amount of pressure built up on him over the years, which I'm sure he's let go a lot of that this year. But they can't afford to let up at all. They have to keep their foot mashed down on the accelerator as much as they possibly can tonight, because if they lose this game tonight or throw in the towel, as you've seen that happen in previous. I've seen it happen in the Stanley Cup before.
I've seen it happen earlier this year.
Absolutely. You've seen teams throw in the towel and they figure, well, we got the lead, we'll just come back and get them in. But you see, then
Tampa Bay did that in Washington. In game 6.
You know what? That's true.
Yeah.
And it cost them the series.
Yep.
Man, that's a great point, Wayne. Yep. But, if they lose, then Washington has to win at home. Because I think you and I are in agreement. If it goes to Game 7 in Vegas, this thing is over, and I think the Vegas Golden Knights are the Stanley Cup champions. I really do. If they get to Game 7, they're going to win it.
If they get to Game 7, that's when you're going to see Washington at this point, there's no pressure on the Vegas Golden Knights for the rest of the series. It is. I mean, to use not to use a gambling term, but they're playing with house money at this point.
Absolutely.
So they can just go out there, leave it all on the ice, give it their absolute maximum effort, and that way, if they do in fact lose, they'll know that they gave it all they had. They got nothing to lose at this point. Right now, the pressure, like you said, is 100% on Washington to close this thing out.
Yep.
And if they do in fact lose tonight, which is very likely, Vegas has been very strong at home thus far during the playoffs. Yeah, Washington's got that 1 win, but it wasn't easy, and I would even say Washington was fortunate to get out of there with a win.
Yep.
Vegas could very easily win this game tonight, send it back to Washington. Then the Capitals are going to be coming into their home rink with all the pressure to try to win it at home. They're going to be holding the sticks a little tighter. Everything gets a little bit more tense for them. Right. Meanwhile, Vegas can continue to play loose as a goose, and they can just run right through them. 3 straight. It's only happened once in the Stanley Cup final in history where a team has come back from a 3-1 deficit. It's something in the neighborhood of 32-1, 36-1, something like that, where a team has taken a 3-1 lead, and only one time out of 35 or so seasons, or 35 or so times in all of history, has a team come back from a 3-1 in the Stanley Cup final and come back and win the series. Right. But in this case, it could absolutely happen.
Oh, I very easily. Tonight's game is it's not a must-win for Washington. I feel like this: if Washington is dumb enough to do what Tampa Bay did just earlier, what you just said, absolutely true. Tampa Bay threw in the towel. If they're dumb enough to do that, I could even say that the series might be over, but and Vegas wins it. But if they hang in there and they fight to the very end, it's a 1-goal game, and they give it their all, they can get on the plane and go home at least and say, you know what, we gave it our all. We didn't let it up on the ice. We fought tooth and nail to win the Stanley Cup tonight, and they can feel good about that going home.
Yep.
Yeah, it hurts to lose a 1-goal game when you're trying to win the Stanley Cup, but and I'm telling you as a New York Rangers fan, because we were sitting here 4 years ago, and I can tell you I watched 3 overtime losses against the Los Angeles Kings. I know all about what it feels like.
Yeah.
So, Washington has to fight tonight, and they have to fight unlike maybe they've ever fought before, because they're going up against a circus in Las Vegas. They really are. They're going up against things that no team has had to deal with in terms of how Vegas has. They're almost a wily veteran team with what they've done. But if they do that, they come home really victors, and they can get on the ice in Washington, and I feel like put it behind them and win that game. So that's the challenge, I think, as I see it for them. They have to rely on what they've done all season, what they put together, how they've overcome the Pittsburgh Penguins. That in and of itself was a tremendous victory for them. They have to. That's what they have to do to force this thing to the next step. And if they do enough, of course, to win the Stanley Cup, I'm sure they'll celebrate just as hard as they would had they won it in Washington. Although they probably want to win it in Washington, I think, but for the sake of their fans. But it doesn't matter. When you get to this close, you want to put it away and win that cup. So that's what my thoughts were on it.
Yep. Yeah, and I would certainly agree with just about all of those points for sure. It, like I said, I hope it continues tonight. I want to see Vegas win. I want to see a Game 6. And I really do enjoy if a team is going to win the Stanley Cup, I prefer that they win it at their home rink. So if we're going to have if Washington's ultimately win the cup, going to win the cup, I'd like to see it happen in Game 6. If Vegas ultimately wins the cup, I want to see it happen in Game 7. It's just much more enjoyable to watch the celebration because the fans are into it. They're part of the celebration, everything else. Whereas the visiting team wins the Stanley Cup, the arena empties out, and with the exception of the few hundred fans of the visiting team that happen to be in attendance, they kind of stick around. But it's a much smaller, much quieter celebration when the visiting team wins, and I much prefer making it a whole big thing. Whereas the whole home crowd getting into it would be it's just more enjoyable that way. And I don't know about you, but I'm one of those that when I watch a sports team win a championship, I typically watch late into the night as long as they continue to cover it. Like we'll have to switch over to the NHL network at some point. NBC will only cover it probably until the team picture at the very, they'll cover this cup celebration. They'll cover, the individual players raising the cup. But when they get into the middle of the ice for that group team photo, that's when NBC is going to call it a night, and then we'll have to switch over to the NHL network.
Oh yeah, I cannot afford to do that, but I'm going to try and watch that whole game tonight, and just go blurry-eyed to work tomorrow. And not care.
Yeah.
So, that's we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really kind of pumped, Wayne. It's a day to be pumped for this, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, there's games every third day. All these long pauses between games. It's so much so I went into work this morning thinking that the next game was tomorrow night, not tonight, and I was reminded by a couple of Capitals fans that I work with that no, the game is in fact tonight, not tomorrow night. So yeah, we're gonna enjoy it for sure. The game starts at 8:00. Oh, here we are. We still got several hours to go before we do that. We're in the middle of the afternoon recording this, so we've got a ways to go before the game. But I'm certainly going to sit down and enjoy it, as will you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you have anything else you want to talk about in terms of the Stanley Cup final?
No, I think we did it proper, Wayne.
We didn't get into the nitty-gritty of each team, but for those of you who are listening to the podcast, you're probably watching the games anyway. There's really not a whole lot to describe. We don't need to go through goal by goal telling you exactly what we saw, but because those of you who are listening to us are watching the games, I guarantee it. Y'all know what took place, and y'all know what you would agree that the hockey has been absolutely fantastic so far.
It has been. It really has.
The goaltending alone is just blowing me away. It seems like every game you're seeing a save made by either Marc-Andre Fleury or Braden Holtby, and you're like, they can't possibly do another save as good as that or better than that. And then it seems like at some point, either later in that game or in the next game, they top it with it even. I mean, some of the saves these guys are making are absolutely incredible. So
they really are.
All right. Well, good. Let's move on then. Let's talk about some of the stories that have been going on around the league this week. And we're going to start with transactions. And we have a transaction out of the island in New York that is big news this week. Kind of half expected. With Lou Lamoriello being hired as president of hockey operations, a week or so ago. Yeah. We openly wondered what was going to happen with certainly Garth Snow and even to a lesser extent Doug Waite, the head coach. Well, as it turns out, this week both were officially fired by the New York Islanders. Garth Snow was fired as general manager, and Doug Waite was fired as the head coach on Tuesday. That was a couple of days ago. President of Hockey Operations Lou Lamoriello will take over as the GM and begin the process of hiring a new coach. But kind of weird part of the story is Waite and Snow are actually going to continue with the organization in a different role. Lamoriello's quote earlier this week, he says, they understand the decision that's made. I feel they can be valuable in me picking their brain, asking them their opinion on certain areas. As far as exactly what that role will be, the three of us have decided we'll determine that as we go along. But I'm not going to be afraid to reach out with them. I've already done that. That's the way we'll proceed. So kind of weird that you're going to go ahead and fire these guys, but then keep them in the organization. I don't know if they're going to kind of drop them down into hockey operations type jobs, scouts, player development. I mean, Garth Snow could, I don't know if he'd drop all the way down as being a goalie coach. Because he was a goalie when he played. Yeah.
What does this have to do you feel, in any way with the John Tavares situation?
Huge part of it.
Keeping them on.
Huge part of it, I think. They're more than they're letting on. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Lamoriello was downplaying that whole situation, saying, this transaction has nothing to do with, their negotiations with Tavares. I think it has everything to do with the negotiations with John Tavares.
Well, that's the first thing that struck me is they're not going because Tavares, that whole thing hasn't been decided yet.
I think in order for Tavares to stay with the Islanders, I would not be surprised if he has said to them behind closed doors, I don't want to continue with this organization with the people that are, running it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pure speculation on my part, but where there's smoke, there's fire. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But I think the Islanders right now look very desperate in trying to do everything that they need to do, get all their ducks in a row in order to get John Tavares signed.
Right.
And the more this stuff goes on there, the more I think they're ultimately going to get him signed before July 1st, which will basically make free agency really boring this summer. There's no big-name players like Tavares on the market. So
right.
There's already going to be very little in terms of real big-name blockbuster players on the market. Tavares was by far the biggest name that's going to be available. So if he falls off the board, then it's going to be a pretty quiet summer in terms of free agency.
Right. I tend to agree with that. I don't know. I would see it as the mystifying part is keeping Garth Snow and Doug Weight on.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
That part I don't understand because I think this has everything to do with John Tavares. But keeping them on is the part I don't understand. So I don't know what, it's going to be very interesting. Here we are. It's June the 7th, and we haven't heard a peep out of New York. And we're getting ready to talk about another big name player in a minute, who's letting it be known where he wants to stay. You see.
Yep.
And that's not happening in New York, with respect to the Islanders. So, and maybe that's the way they choose to do it. Maybe they just say, look, we're not going to talk about this till the season is over, or we're close to doing whatever we're going to do, and that just may be the way they handle it. But you would think in a city like New York, which is as media crazy as any city in the world, that you'd hear something. And we're not hearing anything.
Yeah, they're doing a good job of staying pretty quiet. And of course, they've got the whole arena deal too that they're continuing to work on as well. So, just a lot of transition and just a lot of just uncertainty going on with the New York Islanders. And of course, there's also the rumors coming out of Canada, probably Quebec, that are saying that the Islanders are getting ready to move.
Yeah.
But a lot of those rumors, if you talk to anybody who knows that's anywhere close to the organization, that those are just flat out fabricated stories by what's the term that Gary Bettman once used? He said fabricated stories by cities and or media outlets of in particular cities that are trying to finagle a way to get a team to come to their city.
Yeah.
And just creating rumors, like the whole Carolina thing. Lots and lots of rumors that Carolina was on the move, and most of those rumors originated out of Quebec City. So,
right.
And not the Carolinas.
Right. That's a very good point.
So, the Islanders, unless their whole arena situation in the Belmont Park, that whole development falls through completely, I don't see the Islanders going anywhere.
Right.
So, yes, just a matter of whether or not Lamoriello can pull his strings and find his. They don't call him Loophole Lou for no reason, to find a way to get it done with Tavares.
Yeah.
Before that team, because if they lose Tavares for nothing, that team is in for a pretty long. I mean, yeah, they got some nice pieces there, but but to lose your number one guy,
yeah,
your franchise player,
it's like Roberto Luongo. You know, it'd be the same thing. Only this would be a devastating loss.
That's going to set them back years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to set the Islanders back years because they're a good enough team with Tavares. They're a good enough team to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they are. Not as good as they were a few years ago, but yes, they are.
Yeah.
They are because they've lost Poso.
I don't think they're Stanley Cup contenders by any stretch, but
yeah,
but they're certainly good enough to make the playoffs. They lose Tavares, they're not making the playoffs. Period.
No. And not for a long time.
Not for a while. No. So as far as player transactions, there really hasn't been anything that is cemented. Well, there's one player, and we'll get to him in a second, that actually has officially signed with a team. But as far as all the NHL players that are, you know, either going to free agency this year or players, you're seeing a lot of talks with players that will be going to free agency next year because as of July 1st, those players that are going to be free agents next year are eligible to be re-signed immediately. So teams will start working. You're seeing more and more of this as time goes on, whereas teams are starting to work on their established stars. As soon as they're within or less than 1 year away from going to free agency, under the terms of the CBA, they're allowed to re-sign these players or extend their contracts out. And that's why this year's free agent group is rather weak, because most of the teams that had players that were scheduled to go to free agency this summer have all re-signed their players already.
Right.
And Tavares is one of the few that has yet to re-sign. So, I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning did it last year with Stamkos. They signed him right before he went to free agency. You know, Connor McDavid signed. Carey Price signed. I mean, the list is long of a group of players that were going to head for free agency, but got signed to extensions long before they became free agents. So, with that in mind, we're into that time of the year where I like to call the silly season, where you're hearing all kinds of crazy rumors of which players are going where. I mean, you name it. I've heard Oliver Ekman-Larsson's name come up, Phil Kessel's name come up, several players from Carolina, Noah Hannafin, Justin Falk, Jeff Skinner, just to name a few here in Carolina, that are reportedly being shopped around. You got a whole, I mean, and I'm not going to really focus on any one of these stories because these are nothing more than just rumors and you know, hearsay at this point. But it's kind of entertaining though to see some of the things that are being thrown around.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen a tremendous amount of it any more than any other season, Wayne.
Yep.
But as I said, the John Tavares cloak over that whole thing is really amazing.
Yeah.
Particularly, you know, I mean, if John Tavares played for the Nashville Predators or if he played for the I'm picking the Arizona Coyotes, you might not hear, you know, that's a different situation in terms of the media in those cities. But New York City, you don't hear anything. That's really amazing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of New York City, Kovalchuk is another one of those names that you keep hearing about. He's begun talks with several teams. They haven't named any specific teams yet, although he has come out and has said that he wants to win. So look for Kovalchuk to end up playing for a team that is a potential Stanley Cup contender. Although some guys could, you know, pick wrong. I mean, you got who was the last big Russian name to come over from Radulov is probably one of the more recent ones where he came over and wanted to win and picked. Well, he picked Montreal to start with, and I think he's down in Dallas now. Is he still there?
Yeah.
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 So, And he hasn't had any playoff success as of yet. But yeah, Kovalchuk has come out and said that he is he wants to win. So I wouldn't look for him to go to a team that is in a rebuilding state at this point.
Right.
So now, question is, he's also had, glowing reviews of Lou Lamoriello. So it makes you wonder, okay, he loves Lou Lamoriello, but he wants to win. So it doesn't look like he's going to the Islanders, despite the fact that Lamoriello is there.
Well, I mean, if they lose Tavares, Lamoriello may say, look, I'll bring in Ilya Kovalchuk, and we'll just start over.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The problem with Kovalchuk wanting to go to a contender team or a winning team, or however you want to label it, the bottom line is a lot of those teams that are in that position of having a strong team and are considered Stanley Cup contenders, a lot of those teams are tight against the cap.
Right.
So how many of them can actually afford to spend money on Kovalchuk? Unless he signs for a kind of a sweetheart deal, signs at a discounted rate in order to win.
Right.
That would be the only possible outcome there. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But Kovalchuk is certainly coming over. So even without Tavares in there, I think that would propel Kovalchuk as one of the bigger prospects available or free agents available. Wouldn't you think?
Well, it's either going to be Tavares or him.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Talk of another Russian who is possibly coming back over to the U.S. Valery Nikushkin could return to the NHL next season, according to a tweet from the Dallas Stars. Quote from the general manager, Jim Nils, said, I think in the end, Val's going to come back as a Dallas Star here this year. So, as you know, he played the last 2 seasons in the Continental Hockey League after playing for Dallas from 2013 through 2016. He has 64 points in 166 games, but he is only 23, so he's still very young. So the 3 seasons he did play was, years 18, 19, and 20.
Mm-hmm.
So he was extremely young when he played for the Stars the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
He was picked 10th overall in the 2013 draft. If he does, in fact, come back, that is going to be a nice addition for the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, agreed. And we talked about that, actually, I think in last season's podcast about him coming back.
I think when he decided to go back to Russia, we talked about it. So
yeah.
But they, in Dallas, they've got a new coach. In Jim Montgomery, they've got a lot of good players already in their core. They got Radulov, you got Sagan, you got Jamie Benn. I mean, it's a pretty decent team. And Nikushkin could make that team really good.
Oh, yes.
It could put them over the top and put them into a contender status for sure.
Agreed.
All right. Rick Nash. Did you see this story?
Yeah, I did see it. I mean, if you contrast this with the John Tavares situation, I think it's telling. It really is. Rick Nash.
The story came out
wanting to remain a Bruin.
Yep. Rick Nash came out this week that he and the Boston Bruins are resuming contract talks. And will continue to talk before Nash becomes a free agent on July 1st. And that message came from Don Sweeney, and he told that to the Boston Globe on Friday. So So the Bruins have a little bit of cap space this year. So they've got room to sign him, even if they have to overpay him a little bit, because obviously he'll be an unrestricted free agent. If they only sign him to that short 1-year contract at a steeper than what they probably should pay for him, he's certainly not the Rick Nash that they had in him in New York and Columbus. He's not that Rick Nash, but the Bruins don't need him to be. I think he'll be a nice addition on the third line. Kind of like what he did towards the end of the season. So, be a good depth player for them. Because the Bruins are going to be losing a few guys here to free agency. Not any of their big name, their core group of players. Nobody's leaving in that sense. But they've got a few unrestricted free agents that are going to be taken off. Brian Giunta's probably not going to be back. Riley Nash, it looks as though there may not be room for him on the roster. Unless, of course, Rick Nash doesn't sign, then they may go and see if Riley Nash comes back. And there's a few other players that are going to be unrestricted free agents, but none of them are, they're not Marchand, they're not Bergeron, they're not, they're big name stud players. So, I'd be okay with a Rick Nash signing, provided the money's right and the term is short.
Yeah.
Because next season, several of their young players that they have now will be unrestricted free agents, and the Bruins are going to have a very difficult time fitting those guys under the cap next year. When all those entry-level deals are done.
Right.
For those guys. So for one more season, I'm okay with them adding Rick Nash. Why not?
Right.
I'm sure Sweeney will come to a cap-friendly deal for that one.
I agree.
All right, and the final transaction is an actual transaction, not rumor. Bogdan Keselevich signed a 1-year contract with the Florida Panthers on Friday. Financial terms were not disclosed, and I didn't go look it up on Cap Friendly to see what he paid, what he's getting paid. The 28-year-old defenseman is a 9-year veteran of the Continental Hockey League. He has 16 assists in 44 games with CSKA Moscow in 27-18 and was selected to the KHL first All-Star team. And he was also a participant in the Olympics, because the picture that led this, or that this story came from, actually shows him in his Olympic uniform. So that's how I know he actually played. So Panthers taking a bit of a chance here on a Russian player.
Yeah.
That has not played here in the States thus far. I mean, he's been playing 9 years over there. But he's on the first All-Star team for the KHL, so the KHL recognizes him as being one of the best defensemen in the KHL. And of course, Florida needs to get a little bit more depth on their defense. So why not give a chance like a guy like him? I'm sure he's thrilled.
Oh yeah.
Because he's going to live in his Januaries and Februaries in Moscow to live in them in Miami. That's got to make a guy happy.
If you like warm weather, it does.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was the only signing that I've seen thus far this week.
Yeah.
Or actual signing, because, all eyes are on the Stanley Cup final at this point. All right. Once again this week, I had no injuries or suspensions or fines. Obviously, we know there are injuries with the Capitals and the Golden Knights. They're just not talking about them.
Right.
They're keeping everything under wraps at this point. And as soon as the series is over, we're going to find out that half the team on both teams are all got injuries that they've been nursing. All right, that puts us down into some of the other interesting stories we had going on around the league this week. And the first one I've got is I wanted to talk about the Washington Capitals and their fans. I don't know if you remember watching Game 1, and, of course, Game 1 was in Vegas, and seeing the you know how they like to show the shot of the area immediately surrounding the arena.
Yep.
And I remember watching Game 1, and they showed the area around outside the arena. It probably was a few dozen fans outside the arena, and that's it.
Of
Washington.
You mean, yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Obviously, Washington's on the road.
Right.
You know, there, and yeah, there were just a few fans standing outside the arena. The picture that they posted on this article, I don't know if you saw it.
No, I did not.
But the fans that are standing outside the arena in this particular picture, 10,000, 12,000 people minimum. I mean, it's just it looks like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Just shoulder to shoulder people completely filling the streets. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm wondering where those fans were during Game 1.
Yeah. Yeah. It has been progressively growing versus the Vegas Golden Knights, who have had thousands and thousands of fans.
All the way through.
All the way through.
Yeah.
They have had, I tell you, it rivaled Toronto and Yonge Street with the number of fans, a sea of people that they have had in Vegas. It has been unbelievable how many thousands.
Yeah. Well, they're showing up now in Washington.
Yeah.
So, well, you know, it makes me wonder when was the last time Washington had a professional sports team win a championship from the Big Four? The Redskins?
Yeah. The Redskins, and it was, I think they said 26 years ago, 1992 or something like that. They won the NFL Super Bowl, and of course Joe Gibbs was on hand at Game 3 to lead the Capitals fans in the chant, and he also was on NBC pregame talking about the last time that the city of Washington won a sports championship.
Yeah, because the Capitals have never won one. The Bullets / Wizards, I don't believe, have won one, have they?
Maybe.
I don't believe so.
That I'm not sure on, to be honest with you. Didn't Elvin Hayes play with them? I'm not sure if they won back during his time.
Yeah, I don't think they did. And, of course, that leaves the Washington Nationals, which are a team that's only been in Washington, maybe 20 years?
Yeah, not that long.
If that, because they moved from Montreal. They were the old Montreal Expos. So, and they obviously haven't won anything yet. Not as a Washington team, anyway. So, yeah, it's been a while since Washington's won. So I guess we'll just chalk it up to their fans just not knowing how to be a winning city. Because Boston fans are a little spoiled with all the teams that they have that consistently win. So, and the other thing I wanted to note about the fans, the sea of red that we're seeing in the Washington arena is incredible.
Yeah.
It seems like everybody in the building is wearing red.
Yeah, it might be. It certainly looks that way. Unless they're a Vegas supporter.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, it should be interesting to see the size of the crowd in this, tweeted out in this article or posted out in this article. If Washington ultimately wins the Stanley Cup, I can only imagine what the party is going to be like.
Yeah.
There in Washington.
It will be wild. Washington, you know, They will have a big party if they win. There's no question about it.
So, and then of course Vegas fans have been all, are all in as well, but they've been doing it all season long. It's more of a story now that Washington fans have finally showed up now that they're a win away. All right, moving on. I saw an article this week that Rocky Wirtz, the owner of the Chicago Blackhawks, has been talking this week. He's said this week that the Blackhawks could look to make changes early next season if the season starts poorly. We're not going to have a knee-jerk reaction, Wirtz told Crane's Chicago Business. You can't let your emotions be in control. He added, I think the team will be fine, but if things are off at the beginning of the year, that's a different story. Nothing lasts forever.
Right.
The report said, asked if that means changes could occur right after the holiday season if the team is doing poorly. Wirtz had a short answer, yes. Wirtz did not say what those changes might be. The Blackhawks this season failed to make the playoffs for the first time since 2008 after winning the Stanley Cup in 2010, 13, and 15.
Yep. I did not see this article. I did not hear about this, and this is very interesting to me. But it doesn't make – I mean, they are resting on their laurels this season.
Yeah.
Because they've had three cup – every time they've made a run, practically, they've won the Stanley Cup. So
well, and the changes they made last summer was basically it almost felt like that they were trying to bring back the same guys that they had the last time they won the Stanley Cup.
Right.
And they had to get rid of them then due to salary cap reasons, but now they were trying to bring them all back for next year, last season, trying to as it were, bring the band back together.
Yeah.
So, and that rarely works. Every time I've seen a team try to hold on to the same group of guys, it usually turns out to be, it's hard to remanufacture that. That catching lightning in a bottle like that, I guess, is probably the point I'm trying to make.
Right.
And the Blackhawks tried to do it last year, and they failed miserably.
Yeah.
And it looks like not many changes are going to be made. I mean, what I'm gathering from these remarks, it looks like the Blackhawks are not going to be making many changes this summer to their team, kind of going with the same guys that they had. Hoping that everybody has bounce-back years, which understandable. The Blackhawks are right tight against the cap, so they certainly can't go out and sign a free agent anyway. So it looks like they're just going to take a wait-and-see approach, and if they kind of fall on their face again at the beginning of the year, you're going to see moves be made.
And it could be, Wayne. I don't know. This offseason, you might see a move. I don't know. You might see somebody go. One of the big players on that team decide he's going to leave and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Don't know. Wouldn't surprise me.
It'll be certainly something to worth watching anyway as we progress into the summer. All right. Next story I have, did you see that PK Subban and Bruin Zdeno Chara were in school together?
I did see this article. Yes, I did see this one.
Yep, PK Subban and Zdeno Chara aren't teammates, but they were Ivy League classmates this week. The two all-star defensemen attended Harvard Business School together, taking courses in the business of entertainment, media, and sports. The 3-day program teaches proven approaches for launching and managing creative products and portfolios, managing and marketing talent, assessing and determining when to make smaller versus blockbuster bets, identifying and capitalizing on market disruptions, and other strategic challenges, according to the school's website. It's designed for professionals in the talent industry, including athletes, musicians, actors, and agents.
Chara and Subban shared some of their experiences on social media, and of course, there's a link to in this article to PK Subban's account where he's basically live tweeting from the classroom, him and Chara.
Yeah.
And he posted a short little video on Twitter, and then he said in his tweet, "My classmate, Big Z," and it shows the two of them. It shows the two of them just kind of standing together. So
PK has a flair about him for really. He doesn't lay an egg. Have you ever noticed that?
No.
He's very good at whatever situation he's in or whatever he's promoting. He's very good at touting it. He's extremely good at his skill in making it the cat's meow is really good. He's good at it.
Well, let's put it this way: when his playing days are over, he's not going to disappear.
No, he won't.
He's going to find another way. I would hope he's going to end up in the broadcast booth, because I think he'll be very entertaining to watch.
Yep.
Hopefully he won't go into coaching and be one of those guys, because those guys, give their boring cliche answers all the time in press interviews. PK is way too colorful for the standard the standard rehearsed answer to every question. But yeah, the article goes on. Subban called Chara, quote, an old acquaintance of mine, in a video he shared from the class on Thursday. Chara posted some thoughts on his Instagram account. He said, quote, "It's been an absolutely unbelievable experience, and I love every piece of it, every minute, every class. Such a great time to spend after the season," he said in the video. The Nashville Predators and Boston Bruins defensemen weren't the only professional athletes in the class. Michael Strahan, former Super Bowl champion with the New York Giants and current TV personality. Former NBA player Chris Bosh, Olympic ski champion Lindsey Vonn, former NFL wide receiver Mohamed Massaquoi, and international soccer players Kaka. Is that guy really named Kaka? All right. I don't do soccer, obviously. Mario Melchiot, I don't know any soccer player names. Edwin van der Sar and Nuri Sahin were also in the group. The professor, Anita Elbers, shared a picture with her famous students on Instagram. So, yeah, they're all pretty much athletes. So interesting to see PK and Chara getting together off, because on the ice, when, the Bruins played the Canadiens before PK got traded, those two battled like two guys that hated each other.
Yep.
And here they are hanging out together.
Yep.
So, and of course, PK making appearances in Boston, Boston Bruins fans automatically jump to the conclusion that the Preds are going to trade PK to the Bruins, and PK is going to play for the Bruins from now on. And, of course, I'm sure nothing is going back to Nashville for the exchange.
Yeah.
Just because PK was in Boston doesn't mean he's going to be a Boston Bruin. And Bruins fans, some of the Bruins fans are crazy when it comes to rumors like that. But anyway, thought that was an interesting story.
That was a very interesting story.
And, of course, the scouting combine was this week.
Yep.
Where all the top prospects in the upcoming NHL draft were in Buffalo at the Harbor Center to take part in the scouting combine, basically where they measure, basically put numbers to everything. I mean, jumping and speed and reach and you name it. I think they stole this from the NFL.
Yeah.
Just nobody is going to it's not going to make or break their draft based on their results in the scouting combine. It just gives the teams a little bit more information about each player. And the players go through interviews, so they get tested on a mental and physical abilities. basically the players get treated by like they're basically treated like cattle, really,
Right.
as they're being showcased before they go through the draft. I mean, it's
Right.
they're just treated as pieces of meat, essentially. Really nothing of note that I saw come out of it. I mean, I watched a 2-hour, I think it was on Sportsnet in Canada. They posted it on YouTube, and I watched it a couple days ago. They spent most of the 3-hour special on the scouting combine focused on Rasmus Dahlin, and you know, they interviewed him, and then they
he seemed to be the major picture.
Yeah.
Every picture you saw of the scouting combine.
Yeah.
Rasmus Dahlin was in it.
Well, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. He's going to Buffalo. It's pretty much you know, they're calling him a generational defenseman. So unless somebody blows away the Buffalo Sabres with a trade offer, it looks like Dahlin is going to Buffalo with that first overall pick. But they also spent some time with some of the other top prospects around the league. I know that I was particularly interested in the Svechnikov situation because he's projected to go 2nd overall to the Carolina Hurricanes in the draft. And all the announcers and all the people in the press were basically saying that if you were to take Dahlin out of this draft, Svechnikov is the undisputed number 1. So it seems to be 1 and 2 are pretty clear cut, and then it just gets foggy from there.
Right.
And everybody was in agreement that the Canes would be stupid to go with anybody but Svechnikov. So
right.
I guess we'll see. And they're saying that he will be, and I saw him too, Svechnikov. Of course, they have him in shorts and tank tops. He seemed to be way more physically developed than most of the other prospects there, including Dahlin. So, and they were saying that Svechnikov is NHL ready, as is Dahlin, to step in and play right away, year 1.
Right.
So, just more information for the scouts as we head into the draft. That's pretty much all the whole point of the scouting combine. So. Nothing really earth-shattering came out of that. All right. Speaking of the Carolina Hurricanes, I don't know if you saw this article this week, but
and this is one I did not see.
Don Waddell, GM of the Carolina Hurricanes, has come out to say that the Hurricanes are likely to make some changes. Carolina Hurricanes could be looking to shake up their roster after missing the Stanley Cup playoffs for a 9th straight season. Waddell told NHL.com on Thursday. No need to rehash where the Hurricanes have finished. Basically, they continue to, seems like every year, finish just outside the playoffs, which kind of kills them in the draft because they never seem to pick, in the very high spots in the draft. They're picking down in the lower part of that first group. But this season they won the lottery. They were one of the 3 winners of the draft lottery, so they will be picking number 2 overall.
Mm-hmm.
So they will get a very good player. And some questions were asked of Waddell during this interview. First and foremost, how drastically does the roster have to change for the Hurricanes to be successful? Waddell answered, I think we need to make some changes. We have some players that have been there a long time. We've got 9 years missing the playoffs. I think if there's some change that needs to be made, change up the mix a little bit, the culture, we're certainly going to look at that. We're not in any desperate situation. It's not a fire sale. If every player comes back, that's perfect with us. But I think there's also some opportunities and some players that maybe a fresh change and a fresh team might be good for them and bring us some assets that we could use. Next question, how close are the Hurricanes to being a playoff team? It seems to sense the reoccurring theme here. I think if you go back to last year, I hate to blame it on one position, but we think our goaltending, if it would have been average in the league, we definitely would have been in the postseason. I would agree with that. You can reflect upon the goalies. I felt like every time we got on a little bit of a roll, we didn't get the big game that we needed, so I think that's an area that we really have to address. We have lots of balls in the air right now to address that position. So sounds like phone calls are being made.
Yep.
And then naturally the follow-up question to that is, can Scott Darling be that guy for you? He answered, I think Scott's got to prove it to us. He had a very up and down year last year. I don't think he was fully prepared to be a number one guy last year. He knows physically he's got to be much better shape. He probably played 15 pounds heavier than he did the year before in Chicago. I know he's already starting on a program this summer. He's back in Raleigh here in the next week. He's committed to an off-season workout with our strength and conditioning coach. But he's got to prove it to us now. Nothing is going to be given to him. Hopefully we'll have other guys competing with him for a job. Competition usually is good for everybody. So they're admitting.
That's a very good answer Don gave.
Yep, they're admitting that Darling came in out of shape, or came into camp out of shape last fall. So that's and you know, once you do that in this day and age, used to be years ago, if you know, players, they all came in out of shape. And they used training camp to get themselves into game shape.
Yep, and they got away with it.
And they got away with it because there was nobody really there to take their job, per se. Nowadays, there's thousands of players trying to make it to the best league in the world. And if you don't stay on top of your fitness, there's somebody right behind you waiting to take your job.
Yep. Oh, God, Wayne, you couldn't have said it any better. That's very good.
Yeah. So they brought up Cam Ward, speaking of goalies. We're still talking about Cam Ward, or we're still talking about Cam, depending on what we do here. If you look at what Cam's done for the organization, he's had a great career. His numbers were pretty good last year. He was put in some tough situations and for the most part responded to that role. Great locker room guy, great guy to have around the team, especially with a young team. We haven't made the decision yes or no yet, but if everything worked out, it would be nice to have him around. You know what I would almost see, if they ultimately find a way to get two decent goalies in here, I could see them talking Cam into retiring and becoming a goalie coach. Yeah, well, throw that out there, because he's up there in age, and Cam's happy in this area. That's well documented. He doesn't want to leave this area. He doesn't want to leave the Canes organization. He wants to stay put. His family's got roots here now. I believe he's got kids, so you know there's the school situation. He doesn't want to leave. He likes it here. Right. So if he can't make it as a player, he might be a good coach to have around. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that happen. That if they don't have room for him on the roster, that he could find a way to stay here by retiring and joining the coaching staff. Have you been getting calls from teams interested in the number 2 pick in the draft? What else said, I've gotten a lot of calls, and what I've told teams is we're keeping the pick. If you want to present something to me, it's my role as general manager to listen to what you have to say. If someone wants to put a package together that we can't say no to, assets for the organization, and where we're headed, we would look at it, but it's going to be very difficult for somebody to get that pick from us. So they're going to have to be blown away by a deal.
I don't see that happening, Wayne.
Yep.
Not this draft.
Nope.
Yeah.
I don't. Next question: do you have a player or position in mind as a target for the number 2 pick? So basically, whoever was interviewing him wanted to find out if they were, trying to get a gauge on who they're going to pick. He said, "I don't think I'd be giving away anything to say we're looking at the forwards for sure. There's some great defensemen there, but with the 4 guys we have for sure right now, and we've got some young defensemen coming, I think the forwards that are in this draft are game breakers and game changers. I think it's no doubt in my mind that it'll be a forward that we'll pick."
Well, how about this? What if Buffalo passes on Rasmus Dahlin?
Yeah, that's been thrown out there.
What if that, and that might happen. They may say, look, we really don't need the generational defenseman right now. We need this. And so they pick Svechnikov or whoever.
Yep.
What's Carolina going to do in that position? You think they let Dahlin go?
No, you can't. You can't let a player like that go.
I think they keep him.
Yep. If Buffalo passes on Dahlin. And there's no evidence out there to saying that that's happened, but there is always that chance.
Oh,
if they
absolutely.
pass on him, I think at that high in the draft, you got to take the best player available.
Well, I agree, and it the thing is, Wayne, that first pick is the mindset of the people in the room in Buffalo. That's really what it is.
Yep.
And whether or not they pick Rasmus Dahlin, that's the people that it matters. That's who's in the know. So they may not pick him, and I would think it would be a foolish move. But stranger things have happened, and you've seen this go on in drafts before. You know that it's not always what it seems at the NHL draft, or for that matter, any other professional sports draft.
Yep, absolutely, definitely, good point. And then, of course, the article continues. They talk about some of the players that are available at the top of the draft. They brought up Filip Zadina, who's projected to go third overall, anywhere from third to fifth, depending on who you're talking to. Filip Zadina, they brought it up because Zadina and Martin Necas, who is already a Carolina Hurricanes prospect, played together and had a lot of chemistry together as line mates. And they asked about him in particular. And, of course, Waddell said, we've talked about it. It is a factor. How much of a factor in time, we'll know. You get to know the players because now we can ask our player. And, obviously, he's only got good things to say about him. At the end of the day, players will adapt to who they're playing with. And we're going to continue to just make sure that we get the right player. So that tells me, yeah, Zadina is probably not going to be the guy that they're going to pick. I think they're absolutely going with Svechnikov in this case.
Yeah.
So, anyway, kind of an interesting story about the our local team. That came
Very
out
good,
this
Wayne.
week.
That was an excellent story.
All right, and just a couple of honors this week that have come out, and these are kind of off the ice, more of press. The Philadelphia Flyers and the Dallas Stars are the 2018 recipients of the Dick Dillman Award, presented annually by the Professional Hockey Writers Association to honor the work of outstanding NHL public relations staffs in each conference. The Flyers and the Stars PR departments each won the Dillman Award in 2015, and this marks the third time in 6 years that Philly has been recognized, led by Senior Director of Communications Zach Hill and assisted by Director of Public Relations Joe Seville and Manager of Broadcasting Media Services Brian Smith. So, and there's a link to the article in here. I'm not going to go too much into this, and other than the fact that the only thing that came to my mind is, if we're agreeing that this is a award going to public relations departments for NHL teams, why wasn't Vegas considered? I mean, look what they did. Their Twitter account, hilarious.
Yeah.
Everything that they're doing with public. I think this award should not be called a public relations award. It's almost a press relations.
Yeah.
Because the teams that won it was awarded by the Professional Hockey Writers Association. I think it's not public relations, it's press relations.
Right.
Because if it were public relations, meaning the fans involved,
right,
the stuff that Vegas did this year was fantastic. It really was.
I agree.
Everything from their Twitter account to all the promotions they did. Just they did stuff that you haven't seen before around the NHL.
Right.
So if they were truly giving it as a public relations award, Vegas should have absolutely been considered for it. But anyway, I digress. All right.
I agree.
And the other award that came out this week, Joe Bowen will receive the Foster Hewitt Memorial Award for Outstanding Contributions as a Hockey Broadcaster, and Larry Brooks will receive the Elmer Ferguson Award for Excellence in Hockey Journalism during the 2018 Hockey Hall of Fame induction weekend. And that's coming up. I don't have it in front of me. Whenever that is.
Who does he work with?
I don't have that in front of me either.
Larry Brooks, of course, New York Post, does the Rangers beat.
Maple Leafs. Bowen is with Maple Leafs. Of
Okay.
course.
I know Larry Brooks has had some very colorful run-ins with John Tortorella, as you'll recall. You know,
Yep.
I don't know. He's deserving of it. He's been the Rangers. He's had the Rangers beat for a long time.
Yeah, he was with the Post since 1995, according to this article. And he's covered the Rangers for the past 22 seasons.
Yep. So, you want me to be perfectly honest? I don't like him, but I'm glad he's winning an award because he has put in a large body of work with the New York Rangers.
Yep.
He's very critical of them, extremely critical of them. But I disagreed with what he thought.
Yeah, and that's
he was not an Alain Vigneault. Yeah, I really thought he would be too because he and Tortorella had some massive run-ins together. But he painted Vigneault as a softie who kind of let the players rule the team, which I disagreed with.
Yeah. Well, that's typical New York press anyway. All the sports teams in New York they're held to a high standard by the press, and if they think you're screwing up, they're going to let you know about it. It's the same way in Boston.
Yeah,
and it definitely is the same way in some of the cities in Canada, Toronto, Montreal,
Vancouver.
Yep.
It's getting to be a pressure cooker out there.
Yep. So yeah, there's certain teams, certain cities where if you were a member of the organization, whether it be a player or front office staff, and you're reading the papers in that city, it might give you a complex that you're thinking you can't do anything right.
Yeah.
So, anyway, but there's a couple of guys that have been around the game for a long time and are going to be.
And kudos to Larry Brooks.
Yep.
Let me just say it that way. Kudos to Larry Brooks because, as I said, he's put the very powerful spotlight that he has, a very powerful spotlight on the machinations of the New York Rangers at times.
Yep, and Joe Bowen, being a broadcaster for the Toronto Maple Leafs, arguably the New York Yankees of the NHL, he holds a very powerful spotlight as well.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on. Power ranking.
Yeah, and Wayne, surprisingly, it's my week this week. Closing out, it's my week, and we're going to spend 1 minute on it.
All right.
The time that it says for me to announce is a natural number one is Washington. They're leading 3-1 in the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Who wouldn't put them number one?
Right.
Number two is the Vegas Golden Knights, the other team in the Stanley Cup Finals. Everybody else is sitting at home watching, so you'd have to put them number two.
Now, this is flipped from last week because we were in agreement that Vegas was 1, Washington was 2. Granted, when we recorded last week, the series was 1-0 Vegas, and Vegas looked practically unbeatable in that first game. So,
what'd they lose? Three games coming to the Cup Final? 4?
Yeah, they've lost 3 in a row now.
So it was you'd be stupid not to put them number one.
Yeah, Vegas won game 1, and Washington has won the last 3. So,
yeah. And then, of course, I have an honorable mention, and that's the Tampa Bay Lightning. They certainly did play the better of the two teams, Tampa Bay and Winnipeg, in the conference finals. So I put them as my number 3 honorable mention, and that pretty much puts that whole thing to bed, Wayne.
Yep.
We're done with the power rankings.
Pretty much. Yep. Until probably after free agency at this point. There's no point in talking about it at this point. Maybe do one around the draft, but see, the draft is only going to include at most a handful of players that are going to make their NHL rosters. So even the draft isn't going to swing it very far. All right, so we're moving on to our minor league minute. And I'll just real quickly go over basically giving an update on everything that's happened in the Calder Cup playoffs. And then you've got an American Hockey League story that you want to bring out. So,
Yes.
So where we are at in the Calder Cup playoffs is we were, as of the last recording, we were heading into the Calder Cup final, Toronto versus Texas, and they had yet to play a game in the Calder Cup final. Well, since then they have played 3 games, and Game 1 went to the Toronto Marlies, and that was at Toronto. That was a 6-5 final. Game 2 went to Texas. That was a 2-1 final, and that game was also in Toronto. And Game 3 switches over to, now they use the 2-3-2 format, so 3, 4, and 5 are all going to be in Texas. So with Texas earning the split, that gives them a huge advantage going back home for the next 3 games with a 1-1 series tie. But Toronto managed to steal that first game in Texas 2-1. And now the series sits at 2-1 Toronto Marlies. And there are as many as 4 games left in the series. 2 in Texas and then 2 in Toronto. So Texas is still somewhat in the driver's seat. If they just win their 2 home games, that gives them a 3-2 series lead going back to Toronto for the final 2 games of the series. But Texas has officially given up the home ice advantage that they earned by splitting the first 2 games. And Toronto now technically holds home ice once again. So Toronto, all they have to do is win their 2 home games, games 6 and 7, and they take the Calder Cup. But from all accounts, I haven't actually been able to see the games because, you know, of our well-chronicled disdain for American Hockey League's ridiculously priced online streaming package. I'm going to keep bringing it up. And then, so I haven't been able to watch the games, but from all accounts that I've seen online, this series has been very entertaining so far. You know, all 3 games were 1-goal games, so it certainly looks like it's been an entertaining series.
Yes, you'd have to say it has been. I haven't seen anything. I have read some articles, of course, while we study for our podcast each week.
Yeah.
But it does, like you say, look like it's a very entertaining final.
Yep. All right. And you have a story out of the American League as well.
Yes, I do, Wayne. And I just wanted to briefly preface this article by saying that the run to the Stanley Cup for this season has been quite something, really, for the city of Washington. Vegas, of course, is a newcomer. What they've done is tremendous, but they did it with the man who put it together in Washington, and that's George McPhee. If you talk about the Stanley Cup this year, you're going to talk about a team in the Washington Capitals who, there's no question about it, they have, over the years, the best AHL team in existence, the Hershey Bears. Hershey has won the Calder Cup more than anyone.
Yep.
And they're season in, season out, scrutinized as the perennial best team in the AHL.
Always seems that way. There always seems to be in the mix, yeah.
Yep.
And their affiliation has changed over the years. Hershey Bears weren't always the Capitals.
That's correct.
That is
true.
They've been several. Yeah, they've been under several teams, but yeah. Anyway,
that is correct. And but with that, Washington has they have a tremendous asset to their organization, without a doubt. They have an asset that other organizations don't have. And that is the history that has been put together there in Hershey, Pennsylvania. My article is in regards to their coach, who was fired this season because expectations were not met there, and that gentleman's name is Troy Mann. The article that I'm talking about came on AHL.com. The Cup final is bittersweet validation for fired Hershey coach. Article goes like this. The text message lit up Troy Mann's phone the morning after the Capitals eliminated the Penguins with a patchwork lineup featuring 5 rookies. It came from Barry Trotz. "Thanks, Manor, for having all those rookie caps ready," Trotz wrote. "They all played well. You own a piece of this win last night." And believe me, that is a big, big win in the coaching career of Barry Trotz. That is the biggest thing he has ever pulled off, because he did what no other person could do, knock the Penguins out.
Yep.
He did. So if they lose this cup final, they're still going to have to say that. I don't think they will. Mann beamed with pride when more than half a dozen players he coached with the American Hockey League's Hershey Bears contributed to the victory that got the Capitals into the Eastern Conference Final. Many of those players are still playing key roles for Washington in the Stanley Cup Final against the Vegas Golden Knights, more than a month after Mann was fired from his job as Hershey's head coach. This is a bittersweet time for Mann, who had a hand in the development of Jacob Vrana, Chandler Stevenson, and Kristen Juice as coach, and was an assistant when Braden Holtby, John Carlson, Dmitry Orlov, Andrei Burakovsky, Jay Beagle, and Tom Wilson went through Hershey on their way to the NHL. Heard any of those guys' names before recently?
Oh, yeah.
Considering their success of those players and Hershey products Nate Schmidt and Cody Eakin contributing for Vegas, the Cup Final is a validation of Mann's methods of getting prospects ready for the next level. I called Troy Mann the other day and thanked him for producing a lot of good players, Trotz said. All the players he had the last couple of years are playing in the Stanley Cup Finals, guys who haven't played a playoff game before. They've brought some of that winning tradition they had in Hershey. It's important for those guys to be a part of it. Mann has remained connected to the Capitals' playoff run by talking to Trotz and Hershey video coach Mike King, who's in Washington. Amid interviews with other organizations for another AHL job or work as an NHL assistant, he has watched about 80% of the Capitals' games this postseason and can see the elements in players' games he and assistant Ryan Murphy harped on improving during their 4-year tenure. After giving Vrana some tough love by scratching him in the playoffs a year ago, Mann notices the 22-year-old winger getting between the faceoff dots to create offense like he asked. He watches Stevenson playing with the consistency that was sometimes lacking in Hershey, which was all part of the plan. As much as Mann notices the improvement from afar, the players feel it too, and credit him for giving them the playing time to grow their games in Hershey, a market that expects championships as much as development. But after 3 playoff appearances, including a trip to the Calder Cup Final in 2016, missing the postseason this year led to the Capitals not renewing Mann's contract. Troy is a dedicated and hardworking coach, and we appreciate all he has done for the Hershey Bears, Capitals GM Brian McClellan said in a statement. At this point, we feel a fresh approach and a change in leadership is needed in order for us to continue to develop our young players towards the next level and for success at the AHL level. That stung Mann, who worked 8 of the past 9 years in the Capitals system, made Hershey his home in that time, and believed he did his job. I think it's very difficult for anybody to tell me that I haven't done my job here, Mann said. I'm very grateful they gave me my first opportunity. As much as I'd love to be the head coach of Hershey next year, the only thing I can hope for now is that other NHL teams are recognizing the work that we did here, and that'll help pay off in the next few weeks here of securing another opportunity. Mann was a finalist for one job already and is in demand as Ottawa, Arizona, and Colorado all look to fill AHL head coaching vacancies. He has a big supporter in Trotz, who said recently the Capitals would not be the Eastern Conference champions without Mann and Murphy helping develop Stevenson, Vrana, Juice, Nathan Walker, Travis Boyd, and Madison Bowie. They did a really good job, Trotz said. They've developed well, and they've been a big part of it. So that's really kind of, I thought it was very, very interesting. A team in the Hershey Bears who they're expected to be a perennial playoff team. And they got rid of a good coach who's done very well for them. So the standard is very high in the Washington Capitals organization.
So if they get rid of him, does that mean the Capitals probably won't bring him up to the NHL in a possible assistant role, or?
It sounds like Trotz likes him. But why get rid of an existing assistant in Washington now if they win the Cup, you know?
Yeah.
So he's got to try and, I guess.
Sounds like he'll turn up somewhere at some point, though.
Yeah.
If he's that well regarded with Washington, he's probably that well as well regarded by other coaching ranks, and I'm sure he'll turn up somewhere else. But yeah, with him developing several players on both teams, and of course George McPhee having his fingerprints all over both teams in this series, it's just kind of a weird situation to see this because, you know, as you know, McPhee drafted Ovechkin. He drafted, I think he even drafted Kuznetsov and Backstrom. He may have just drafted Backstrom.
Right.
But, yeah, McPhee's fingerprints are all over the Capitals, and, of course, they're all over the Vegas Golden Knights. So must feel weird. And him and name escapes me, the current GM of the Capitals.
Yeah, his name is.
They're good friends off the ice.
Oh, they are.
They're former college roommates.
Yeah, they went to Bowling Green together.
Yep.
And that's where McPhee played hockey.
Yep. Yeah, they were teammates on the hockey team at Bowling Green.
Brian McClellan.
Yep.
Is his name.
Yep. So yeah, it's just a lot of intertwining relationships. Yeah. Of course, that's the way it is at this day and age in modern hockey. Is guys know each other, they end up on different teams, and.
But this is, without a doubt, this is the George McPhee Stanley Cup Final. It really is.
Yep.
Washington has earned it. So.
Yep, for sure. Well, good story.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to our picks of the week. We're winding things down here, and I've got an interesting story out of the referee ranks, and you've got one. Let's see, I don't have it right in front of me.
Yeah, mine is one that'll promote a discussion, and it's in regards to Pat Sajak.
All right, why don't I get mine out of the way?
Okay.
Because it's kind of an interesting story out of the referee ranks. Garrett Rank, I don't know if you recognize that name, but he is an NHL referee. He's fairly new to the referee ranks. He reffed 76 NHL regular season games this season. But he made news this week because he has qualified for and will play in the U.S. Open Golf Championship later this month.
Yeah, that is amazing.
And if you know anything about golf, you know that just making the field of the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open, the reason it's called the U.S. Open, it is an open golf tournament. Anybody in America, or anybody in the world for that matter, can qualify for this golf championship if you're a good enough player. Anybody. You, me, anybody. We can go to one of the they have sectional qualifiers, they have regional qualifiers, and if you work your way through the different tournaments, and if you're good enough, anybody can make the US Open Golf Championship, not just professional golfers. Obviously, the field is full of professional golfers, but there are amateurs that also make the field as well. Well, Garrett Rank has officially made it, and he will play in the U.S. Open. I know the tournament is in June. I just can't remember which weekend. And he says, hockey and golf are high-pressure sporting events, Rank told the Marietta Daily Journal. It would be really cool in 2018 to say that I played with the best players in the world in a major championship and officiate the best hockey league in the world. The 30-year-old, a full-time NHL referee since 2016, made the U.S. Open on Monday when he tied for first at a sectional qualifying event in Roswell, Georgia. His caddy was NHL referee Dan O'Rourke, ESPN said. The 118th U.S. Open Championship will be held at Shinnecock Hills in Southampton, New York, from June 14th through the 17th. Realistically, I think I'm capable of making the cut and would love to make the cut, Rank told the Record of Kitchener, Ontario. If I could play 4 rounds at the U.S. Open, I would be extremely thrilled. Rank, a native of Elmira, Ontario, is the 78th ranked amateur golfer in the world. He made his NHL debut back on January 15th, 2015, and has officiated 187 NHL games, getting his first Stanley Cup playoff experience this postseason as an injury replacement for linesman Steve Barton in Game 2 of the Eastern Conference first round between the Capitals and the Blue Jackets. Rank, who had testicular cancer in 2011, finished second at the 2012 U.S. Amateur Championship and played for Canada at the 2015 Pan Am Games. He's been an official in the American Hockey League and the ECHL and is on his way up to the NHL. I think about it a little bit, but when you look at 2018 and figure you've officiated a couple of periods in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and then you get to have a couple of rounds in the U.S. Open, playing in a major championship against the best players in the world, you can't really argue with that, Rank told the Record. I'm quite happy with having a job and being able to play golf at this level on the side. So, very interesting story.
That is truly amazing.
To see him be able to pull it, because, you know, obviously we know what he's doing with his spare time when he's not refereeing hockey games, though.
Yeah.
He's playing a lot of golf.
That's incredibly difficult to do.
You've got to be an extremely talented golfer, and even you just have one bad round, a couple of bad holes at those sectional qualifiers, and you play yourself right out of that. So you have to have everything line up perfectly to be able to make it through all those qualifying events, because they only take only a couple of players from each of those qualifiers,
right,
to join the field. So I guess we'll be pulling for him.
It'll be the experience of a lifetime. I'm sure it will be.
Yep.
And Shinnecock Hills has a lot of history to it. That course has been around for a long, long time.
Yep. Yeah, they do go back to, of course, the U.S. Open. They do a different course every year, but they do tend to go around to the same, 20, 30, 50, however many it is, golf courses. Shinnecock Hills, I'm sure, has hosted U.S. Opens before. I know they've hosted many, many, many pro events.
Yeah.
Over the years.
It has hosted the U.S. Open several times before. I don't know how many.
It's a very well-known golf course. But the when you get to that tournament, though, that U.S. Open tournament, I've watched it, and when they set up that golf course to get it ready for those golfers, man, do they set it up hard.
Yeah.
They set it up so that the greens are as fast as if you were putting across concrete. And the rough just off the fairway, the tall grass, they let it grow extra long for this tournament. Yeah. They make it so it is a very tough test for all the golfers. So much so that the golfers over the years complain about the U.S. Open. The conditions are almost unfair, because if you're not driving the ball straight down the fairway, and you get it into that long grass, you can pretty much kiss your round goodbye. Because it's the penalty for missing shots in the U.S. Open is severe, to say the least. So, but this isn't a golf show; this is a hockey show. So let's move on.
That was good, Wayne.
So congratulations to him for making the field anyway, and of course I'll probably keep one eye on that tournament to see how he does, and we can provide follow-ups in later episodes. All right. You have an interesting
my article to close it all out, Wayne, is in regards to Pat Sajak, and I'll start this off by saying more than 1 year, more than once, I have watched the Outdoor Classic and seen them interview Pat Sajak, who makes his way to every single one of them. He has not missed one. He'll let you know that too in an interview. He's been to all of them. Don't know whether he went to this year's, but I know he up through the last. I don't know if they interviewed him for the Rangers Outdoor Classic this year, but I believe all the way up to that Classic, he had been to every game. He truly is a very big fan of the game, and I knew that. But I never knew what team he pulled for. I really didn't. And this past week, on Sunday, of course, he made his debut as a guy announcing the starting lineups for the game, and he has not done that before to my knowledge. But he did it this week, and it prompted an outroar from people who were following this. And there was an article on NHL.com that I'll read first, and then I'll read the reaction that he got from several people. The article on NHL.com says, Sajak announces starting lineups before Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. The game show host, Capitals season ticket holder, takes center stage. Pat Sajak took the stage Saturday, and no one even needed to spin or buy a vowel. The Washington Capitals season ticket holder and longtime host of the game show Wheel of Fortune announced the starting lineups before Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final between Washington and the Vegas Golden Knights. Sajak has been a Capitals season ticket holder since 2005 and 6 and took the ice clad in a red pullover. He gave a brief history of his Capitals fandom before reading off the starters for the first Cup Final game at Capital One Arena since 1998. We have seen great teams, great players, great moments, and we have seen triumph, and we have also seen disappointment, Sajak said, addressing the sold-out crowd. But this season, this team, this playoff run surpassed it all. Sajak also has season tickets for the Los Angeles Kings, since he has recorded episodes of Wheel of Fortune for more than 25 years in Los Angeles. He has seen the evolution of hockey in the U.S. Capitol, particularly since Washington has had forward Alex Ovechkin on its side. It really began with Ovechkin, Sajak said on NHL Network before Game 3. The Caps had a pretty good fan base, but when he came, when that team was built, now you can't find a seat. It was not the case when we started coming. There were a lot of empty seats. Sajak has also been compelled by the Cup Final thus far. This playoff series thus far has been just breathtaking, Sajak said. We have enjoyed every minute of it. These are two great teams. Now, I was kind of happy to see him out there on the ice and kind of finally learn of his allegiance to the team. But boy, did that ever create a stir in the social media world, particularly in Twitter. And I wanted to also bring up CBSNews.com's story because they chronicled Sajak's appearance. So that article went like this. Throughout the Golden Knights' improbable playoff run, Vegas has left countless people stunned with wacky, over-the-top pregame ceremonies at T-Mobile Arena. I've been, actually looking forward to tonight's. With the Stanley Cup Final shifting back to D.C. for Game 3 on Saturday night, many wondered how the Capitals would counter in the way of pregame festivities at Capital One Arena. Matching or exceeding the excitement and absurdity of the Vegas spectacle would be a tough undertaking, as the Golden Knights employed a catapult, Michael Buffer, and Imagine Dragons in the first couple of games in the series. But perhaps a city that has waited 20 years to host the Stanley Cup Final game would bring their A game to counter Vegas, or perhaps not. The Caps' response to the Knights' opening showcase was to have Wheel of Fortune host and longtime season ticket holder Pat Sajak stand at center ice and tell everyone about his tickets before reading the lineups from a sheet of paper while wearing his best Washington pullover. It wasn't exactly pulse-pounding stuff. If you're underwhelmed, just know you are not alone. Folks on Twitter were quite disappointed by the lack of fireworks, sword fights, and catapults this time around. Here's one, the first one from Greg Wyshynski.
Wyshynski.
Wyshynski, "Dear God, please stop." And that actually was a picture of an answer on Wheel of Fortune. The letters were all turned around to say, "Dear God, please stop." He happened to find that somewhere online and then tweeted that out to people.
Wow.
A second tweet from Adam Gretz. "This is amazing. Vegas has an over-the-top show for its intro, and DC has some old white guy filibustering on the ice. Who says the NHL doesn't know what it's doing?" And then in a third one from Colin Dunlap, he kind of hit the nail on the head. "No one gives a hell about Pat Sajak's season tickets." But nobody in the world was more upset by Sajak's pregame performance than one Keith Olbermann, who attempted to go scorched earth on Sajak via Twitter.
Oh, God.
With that level of anger, we can only presume Sajak has peed in Olbermann's breakfast cereal or kicked his dog at one point. This tweet: if anything better defines the historical vacuum that is the Caps, it's the celebrity lineup announcer Pat Sajak droning on pointlessly about his lifelong fandom. 13 years. Wow. 13 whole years. After 20 years as a self-professed Kings fan. Hashtag, "I'd like you to buy a personality, Pat." Anyways, a hockey game was also played. I'm telling you, Pat Sajak lit up the stratosphere in the social media world after that game.
It seemed weird to me that he was chosen. Because first of all, I had no idea that he was even remotely associated with the Caps.
Neither did I.
When Vegas brought out Michael Buffer, I'm like, yeah, that's Vegas.
Yep.
He's boxing announcer. Vegas is known for hosting countless boxing matches over the years. To have Michael Buffer, that makes total sense for Vegas. But to roll out Pat Sajak, now I didn't expect Washington to do anything special in the game. Let's take for example, we're gonna let Vegas do what they're gonna do. Let's say, for example, the Boston Bruins had made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final. You know what they would have done before that game? They would have rolled out Rene Rancourt once again to sing the national anthem. They wouldn't have changed a thing that they've done over the years. They're not gonna go to those. It's not the right way to say stoop to those levels, but what Vegas does with their pregame, that is totally Vegas's thing. That's their.
Right.
It's Vegas is known for their over the top show business atmosphere to everything that they do there. To see a team like Washington try to match that would have been awkward no matter what they did. But to bring out Pat Sajak, who I didn't even know lived in Washington, D.C. Turns out he lives in the area.
I didn't know that.
Somewhere in Maryland. I just pulled up his Wikipedia. It says he currently lives in Maryland, and I forget I lost the town. But he's originally from Chicago.
Yep.
So if he grew up a true hockey fan, where he seems to say he's a lifelong hockey fan, being from Chicago originally, wouldn't you think he would have been he's old enough to remember the days of the original six. Wouldn't you think he'd be a Chicago Blackhawks fan?
Well,
and then of course he lived in LA for all those years when he was doing, the Wheel of Fortune, and he was like you said, or like it said in the article, up to 13 years ago, he was a Kings fan.
Yeah.
And now he's a Capitals fan. Dude, pick a team.
The way the article was written, the way the article was written on the NHL.com, he is a dual season ticket holder. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that, but the way it's written, it says he also owns tickets to the Los Angeles Kings, season tickets.
That makes sense because his Wikipedia page does say that he has houses in the D.C. area and in L.A.
Yeah.
Which would make sense. He's still doing Wheel of Fortune, right?
To my knowledge, he still is. Yes.
Yeah, and that's taped out there. So, so they would make sense that he would have a place in both places.
Right.
Because while he's doing Wheel of Fortune, while they're taping those shows, and I'm sure they tape many weeks, all at, in big chunks. They can tape them. They can do 20 shows in a week.
Yeah.
In real time.
Right.
So he just goes out there to his other house while he's working, and then flies back east when he's not working. So that totally makes sense. But and I would imagine, being, if he is obviously a hockey fan, having season tickets in both places for a guy like him is not going to be all that expensive.
No.
But Severna Park, Maryland is where it says he lives, and then he also has a second home in L.A. But the comments that he made, before he announced the starting lineup, just came across as just, ugh.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about, I'm a season ticket holder for 13 years. My seats are down by the glass. He says, "Come on down and see me, but good luck getting by my security." I mean, really? Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not understand that part of it, but then again, I'm not there in Washington to know what's going on. It is true that there are a lot of dignitaries, and I mean, you talk about the New York Rangers having stars and the Los Angeles Kings having stars appear at their games.
Yeah.
There are a lot of stars in the governmental media. There's a lot of famous people attending those Capitals games. It's a fact.
But they're all politicians. They don't want to alienate their constituents by admitting that they're a fan of one team or the other.
Right. But I mean, from time to time, the president of the United States, no matter who he is, will go to a Capitals game.
Yeah, but I don't think he's a hockey fan specifically per se. He's certainly not like, he doesn't come across to me as a sports fan the way Obama was. It was clear he was a diehard basketball guy.
Oh yeah.
And
no doubt.
He was a Bulls fan, of course, because he's from Chicago, but yeah. Basketball was Obama's thing.
He would go to hockey games. Obama would go to hockey games.
He would, but that would there's a with politicians, I always look for the message behind the message. They're always, he's probably doing it just to try to get a few hockey fan votes. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was obvious that, he loved basketball. He likes sports anyway. But I don't think it just doesn't come across to me that Trump is that much of a sports guy.
Right.
Maybe he is. I don't know. You just never see him talking sports that often. Obama enjoyed talking sports with anybody who would talk with him about it.
Right.
You don't see that with the current president. So that's why I don't think. I think Trump is a baseball guy. I think more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe possibly an NFL guy, but certainly not hockey. But anyway. But yeah, I guess in a city like D.C., and of course politicians are not going to, because most of the people that are high profile jobs or high profile people are actually not originally from D.C. So you say the senator from, name a state, senator from Florida, were to go to a hockey game and want to come out and support the Capitals. Well, all his constituents back home in Florida would be like, well, wait a minute. You're from Florida. Why are you cheering for the Caps?
Yeah. The media people who cover Washington politics are also at those games.
Well, that's
For
true.
example, I'll throw out Brett Baer, who is a Capitals fan.
Yep.
And calls the shots on Fox's 6 o'clock broadcast.
But they can. They're press. They're not.
Yeah.
their jobs aren't secured by votes.
I agree, but you will see those types of people at the games.
Yeah.
People will recognize.
Oh yeah,
those.
the politicians are, they're all going to the games, absolutely, but they're not going to they're not going to go over the top on their support for one team or another because they don't want to alienate any voters.
Right.
Which
But
comes
I just thought it was interesting because I've followed the fandom of Pat Sajak, as Keith Olbermann put it, for a few years now, wondering who he pulls for. I wonder who his team is.
Yep.
He really didn't let on during the interviews that I saw at more than one Winter Classic who he pulled for.
Right.
And they didn't bring that up. And so when I saw that he was doing the game, the intro game, and then he went on further than that, I'm a season ticket holder of the Washington Capitals. I was kind of surprised by that. And there's no doubt he's a big fan, but you're right. He's pulling for multiple teams. Yeah. I think he loves the NHL. I think that's the major thing.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
You can be a big hockey fan. We're big hockey fans, but we all have our own teams.
Right.
And I get teased by people down here like, wait, you live down here, but yet you're a Bruins fan. Why aren't you gonna? When are you gonna change? Is the question I get. When are you gonna finally become a Carolina Hurricanes fan? And every time my answer is never. I mean, yes, I want to see them succeed, but my allegiance is with the team that I grew up loving, and that will not change.
Right. Right.
I just don't see a circumstance where that would change unless, the team is completely mismanaged, and I absolutely hate the owner and decide to change teams because I don't want to support a certain owner. But I've had plenty of opportunity to feel that way. Believe me, with the Bruins' current owner. But no, I still have my favorite team, and I don't expect that to change. So.
Right.
But Pat Sajak, he seems to have many teams. Right now it's the Capitals because they're in it. All right. Well, that is it. That was a good story.
That's it. Thank you.
All right. So we are done for tonight.
We are finished. We're through.
We've somehow managed to take a quiet week that hasn't had a lot of news and turn it into a full-length deal.
Yes, we did. A lot of good stories on the show this week.
Yep.
And I certainly enjoyed it. So.
Yep. Well, good. Well, we'll go ahead and end it for this week. As for the next few weeks, I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do. Obviously, we only have. I guess a lot will depend on what happens here in the remainder of the Stanley Cup Finals. If this series does drag out, obviously we'll have a show next week. But if it ends tonight, I may wait a couple of weeks and take a breather between now and the next show. So stay tuned for that. But if you don't hear from us for a couple of weeks, if the series ends quickly tonight and you don't hear from us for a week or two, then just know we're not going anywhere, just taking a bit of a break because it's been a long season. We haven't missed many episodes this week, and it's break time because we right after we got the draft coming up, so we'll have full coverage of that. We've got free agency, we'll have full coverage of that, and then this summer will probably be very quiet. I may actually take a break from it this summer because I've got big plans for vacations this summer, and I'm going to be out of town a lot. So there won't be a lot of time to do podcasts for me anyway this summer. So, and we've got to kind of sit back and reorganize here a little bit during the summertime as we head into next season. So, as you know, Steve's going to be part-time going forward, and I've got to come up with a bunch of new hosts. So I've got some people that have shown interest, and I got to get with them and get the ball rolling with those folks, and then we'll get things going. But in the meantime, shows may or may not be sporadic. We'll see, and then we'll take things from there.
And do you have anything you wanted to add before we kill it?
No, other than I've really enjoyed it. As I said last week, I'm going to miss this. I look forward to coming back on once or twice in the near probably next season, as you see fit, to add my 2 cents worth, so to speak. But it's been an incredible thing for me to do. As I said, I never in my wildest dreams would have thought that this podcast and doing a podcast on hockey would have had such a profound effect on my life. But it has, and I've enjoyed it, and I will miss it. It's been great working with you. It makes it all the more better, Wayne, that you are such a huge hockey fan, because we get to talk about things that really matter to us, and that makes a big difference. So.
Well, at the very least, I'll be looking to you for sure on the big Rangers-related stories. Even if you just come on for about a 10-minute segment where we talk about the big Ranger stories, that'll be enough for me. So
that's good. I'll be glad to do it.
So because I know even though you won't be doing a podcast and following all the teams as much as you have been the past couple of seasons, you'll certainly be following your Rangers. So you'll probably know more about what's going on with the Rangers than I certainly will, because I don't watch them as close as you do. So,
well, there's reason to be very happy and looking forward to the future if you're a New York Rangers fan, with a new coach, a new outlook, a big draft coming up with a lot of potential. That's a great thing. You want to have me on talk about Rangers, I'll be glad to do it.
Yep. Well, what I'll probably do to start with is just have you come on at some point this summer, and we can record it away from the podcast, and I can insert it in as a segment where you and I just come on for about 15, 20 minutes after the draft sometime and talk about how the Rangers did in the draft.
That sounds good.
And we can take it from there. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and end it for this week, because I'm hungry. I want to go have some dinner before we watch some hockey tonight. So, and I know you're agreeing with me. So let's go ahead and wrap it up for tonight. And until next time, we'll talk to you then. Have a good week, Steve.
So long, Wayne. Good
work.
Right. Have a good night.
You too. All right.
That was a good one, man. That was a good show. A lot of good topics, a lot of good articles, a lot of good stuff. You're gonna like that one.
What's it got? Honey in it?
No, it's mango sticky rice.
Oh.
It's coconut.
Oh, okay.
Coconut.
My daughter's making dinner. She's trying some new recipe.
No, doesn't deserve
Oh yeah, okay.
So, all right.
Yeah, man.